So here is an IR. Today we're going to talk about IR spectroscopy. So you need to see that when you do IR spectroscopy, you have, here is the machine. There is an IR beam right here. And then this machine is connected to the computer, and the computer is connected to the screen, of course. So what do we need to do first? We need to focus on this portion of the setup. We need to make sure that we prepare our sample correctly. We're going to put the sample here, which is, there is a little diamond here, and underneath it there is a light, the infrared beam, that's going to hit your sample. And after it hits your sample and it interacts with it, causing stretching and rotation, what's going to happen is the machine will see how much of that light is absorbed, and then it will give us a spectrum. So where is that spectrum going to appear? So we have a computer here that reads what this machine does and gives it to you on the screen. So what do we do first? We need to make sure the computer is reading the right software. It's communicating with the machine. So we go and open the software, which is the Omnic here. And then once you open the software, immediately it gives you this dialog box. So as soon as you open the software, the Omnic right here, this dialog box pops up. And you can see here it says multiple experiment for accessories. So what does that mean? It means that the manufacturer has different machines. So we have to tell the computer which machine we're using. And that's where here, right here, you scroll down and you read Smart ITR Diamond ATR. That's the machine that we're using. So you have to select this. Once you select it, you say OK. So now the computer is connected to this machine. So what do we do first? We want to make sure we collect a background. The background being anything that's touching now the infrared beam, and basically it's air. So what is in the air? We have carbon dioxide, we have some water moisture, and you might have some residual junk, hopefully you don't, on your machine. So what you do is, first of all, before, by the way, we collect the background, you make sure that your infrared, So how do we clean it? You take Kim wipe, and you put a few drops of isopropanol, and then you wipe the diamond, which is right in the middle there. And the good news about isopropanol is that it evaporates quickly. So now we completely have a clean crystal. So once we cleaned the surface, we're ready to collect the background. So you have to click. There is this little button there that says COLBKG. That means collect background. Click on it, and again you have another dialog box. This is dialog box means it's talking to you, it's telling you please prepare to collect the background, which means if you didn't clean it, please clean your surface there. And then you say OK, meaning I'm ready. So immediately when you say OK, you will see that it starts to collect with these little bars at the bottom turning blue. And when it's complete, see it scan it. There's another dialog box here. It says confirmation, data collection has stopped. Allow window 1. So as you can see, once it's collected, this is the only time you have this dialog box right after you collect the background where you have to click no. In all the dialog boxes that are going to come up, you say yes. This is the only time you say no. So you're going to say no, because you don't want to view this spectrum. Now, at this point, we're ready to put our sample. So here I'm using a liquid sample. If you're doing the experiment where you have an unknown liquid, don't forget to write your number. Now, how do you put a liquid sample on your machine? You use an open capillary, and we have quite a few of them here. So you grab one, you put it in your sample, and then you don't want to touch the diamond directly. So the best approach is to touch the metal right on the perimeter. And you see there is now some liquid there. And try to be generous, because if you don't put enough, it might evaporate. But then if you wanted to avoid for it to evaporate, you have to cover it. So we have this little piece of glass. The smooth area should be the top area. You see how I can run my finger through it? And make sure before you cover it, you have enough liquid there, it doesn't evaporate. Then you cover. So that's a little cover. And now you're good to go. So we're ready now to collect sample. And this is the button where it says COL-SMP. That means collect sample. All you have to do is just click. And then you say OK. Remember, you always say yes, OK. The only time you say no is right after the background. So we click OK twice. And now it's collecting your sample. So that means the IR beam is hitting your sample and it's taking the data. So you see here, it appears as absorbance. So what it shows you here, these are the wavelength, which is the wavelength centimeter minus 1, which is the inverse of wavelength. So the x-axis is really the energy. The y-axis is the absorbance. But we don't want you to use the absorbance. So what do? We want to first turn it into transmit. So now that we have the spectrum here, it shows it in absorbance. What you do is you want to go back to transmittance. So you see there is a T button at the bottom, not the annotation, I'm sorry. You have to do Control T to turn it into transmittance. And immediately you have this kind of spectrum. Another thing you want to do is, like, now you have to tell the computer how you want this to look like. You can see that some of the peaks are touching the bottom. So if you want to take the full screen, what you do after you did Control T, you can find first your peaks if you want them printed. And there is here on the top, right in the middle, right there, it says FIND-PKS. That means find peaks. So when you click on that Find Peak button, then you see this line appears. So there's a horizontal line, and that horizontal line is showing you whatever is underneath it will appear with the frequency there, with the wavelength. Yeah. So what you do is, if I want these enough, if these are enough for me, that's fine. But if you want more, you click on whatever position you want. So now you can see everything below that line will show the frequency. I will go a little bit higher. So this would be a good kind of spectrum. I'm happy with all these numbers. So when you like all the numbers that appear there, you like all these peaks, that's good enough for you, then you have to accept it. Make sure the computer understands that these are the peaks you want. So what you do, there is a button that says Replace all the way to the upper right corner. You click on Replace, and now the computer replaced the peaks and it's accepting this. The last thing I want to do on this spectrum before I finish is I wanted to spread it out on the screen. So the best thing is to kind of like not have these lines touch the bottom, but more like spread it. And for that, it's like to put it on a full screen. So you go Control F. Control F means full screen. And you can see that the spectrum now is kind of centered in the screen, and it has a nice, it looks the way I want it to look. That's pretty good. And then the last thing I want to write, for example, my name. So you click on the T cursor down here at the bottom left. It says Annotation Tool. It's a big T at the corner there. You click on it, and then you go on your spectrum and you click again, that gives you a box where you're going to write whatever you want to write. So I'm just going to write here my last name. This way I know that it's my spectrum, and then maybe a spacing and put my unknown number. So maybe it's number 1, 2, 3. So that means that here's my spectrum, that's my name, and it's my unknown number 1, 2, 3. And then you hit enter. So now you see it's there, and the last step is you just have to print. So all you have to do is click print, and this spectrum will appear on the printer. So what's next? Now that we took our spectrum, we need to clean up the surface here. So what you do is remove the cover and use Kim wipe, a few drops of isopropanol, and wipe the surface. I would do it probably twice to make sure everything, all my chemical, everything I put there is completely gone. Now that's for the liquid. I completely cleaned it. And then I have here my capillary tube that I use to spot my liquid on the surface. So there is a container here that says use capillary tubes. Make sure you put it back there before you finish. And then you cap your liquid and you put it back. So we're going to do now a solid sample. So first step, again, you click on the Omnic software. And again, always select the right machine. So you have to have the dialog box here, and you go to the ITR diamond and you say OK. And again, before we do the background, we want to make sure the surface is completely clean. So I need to clean my surface here. I'm going to put a few drops of isopropanol. And there's this arm here that has a tip that it's also a good idea to clean it, but to go slowly, gently, kind of wipe the bottom, the tip of this little arm. There's a little cone here. Make sure you clean it up. And now this is clean and it's ready, so we're going to collect the background. Now again, we collect the background, which is really the spectrum of all the air touching the diamond right there. And this will be subtracted, of course, from your spectrum. The machine will take care of that, and that's the power of these kind of tools. Now once the background is done, there's always a dialog box, and again, this is the only time where you say no, because you don't want to put this spectrum to appear later. So you click no, and now we're ready. So how do we put a solid sample? First of all, make sure its crystal is fine powder. You definitely need a fine powder, and all you need to do is put it on the little diamond right there. Just put a little bit of it. Don't overdo it. And then we need to compact the sample. So how do you do it? You turn this arm, and you will see that when you push it, it will snap at the right position. You'll hear it like, I guess it snaps right there. Then you're going to turn this knob all the way down, and what's happening, that tip of that cone is going to push on the crystals to make sure it's compacted. You don't want any air in there. You want to take just the IR spectrum of your sample. So you turn the knob until it kind of clicks, and there is a little clicking sound. So that means it's in the right position and you're ready to collect your sample. Now that the sample is in place, we're going to click Collect Sample. So Collect Sample is on the upper left side, and it says COL-SMP. You click on it and you say OK. And again, OK. It's always OK. The only time you say no is after the background. And now it's collecting. And the way you see it is these little boxes there, they turn dark. So here we go. Our spectrum is ready. And just click yes. And now we have a nice spectrum. Now we need to tell the computer what we want with this spectrum. First of all, I don't want absorbance. So what do? I need transmittance. Transmittance means you hit Control T. And it flips it immediately. The second step is you want to find peaks. You want to see where are your peaks, what is the frequency. So all you have to do is click on Find Peaks. Makes sense. First step, you want to turn it to transmittance, Control T, then find peaks. Find doesn't mean it's going to look for peaks, but it's going to give you their frequency. So click on that Find Peak, and then again, the only peak that will appear are everything underneath this horizontal line. So I want to push it a little bit higher to say I want more than that. I think this is good for me. I want all the peaks that are underneath that line. So what you do is, all you have to do is just move your cursor. If you want higher, you move the cursor up and you click up. If you want it lower, you move your cursor down and you click down. And when you click, it takes everything underneath it again. Once I'm done with that, I'm good. I like these peaks. I'm just going to say replace. So never forget, once you find your peak, replace, meaning the computer understands, I like these, I'm accepting them. Now it's there. Then what's next? I want to have a full screen. So full screen means Control F. F for full screen. And this is good. The last two things left is I need to write my name and I need to print. To write my name, click on the cursor T. At the bottom left side, the big T there, the bold T, and then you bring it to your spectrum and write your name, and then write your unknown number. And say enter, of course. And then print. And we're good to go. We're done. We're not completely done until we leave it the way we found it. So what we need to do is clean up. So now how do we clean up this? First of all, you have to turn it back, like you want to release this arm. And then you turn it away, and then you want to collect your crystals. We have this weighing boat, and there's like a little bit of a space there where you can put in your weighing boat, and you brush it. So you brush it. I can also brush a little bit the tip of this cone. And then once you brush it, you just need to clean it up with some isopropanol. Both of them. Clean the surface of the crystal as well as you can. And then I'm going to clean the tip of this cone on the arm there. You do it twice and you're good to go. A few notes here. Whenever we use a liquid, we cover it with this. What's the purpose of covering it with this is to make sure the liquid doesn't evaporate. But for the solid, we don't need this. All we need is to cover the liquid. So for the liquid, we only need to cover it with this, with the glass. And of course, you don't need this arm to attach it on the liquid or to press it because there's nothing to compress there. But for the solid, you always need to compress it. That's why you need this arm to put the solid in place. And thank you.